Dear songwriter, so you have some songs written, maybe they're recorded on your phone or they're demoed out in GarageBand or Logic or Pro Tools or whatever your DAW is, and you truly believe in them. I mean, you've worked hard on them. You know that you want to bring them to the next stages, whether that's production, release, whatever it might be. There's just one problem. Doing so is very expensive, and I've certainly been there. I've invested a lot in putting music out into the world. I don't regret it for a second, but it is a lot because there are so many different investments, from considering a producer to a mix engineer, mastering, marketing, promotion, and the list goes on and on. So in today's episode, I wanted to invite my friend Jess, a coach who helps artists crowdfund their projects. I wanted her to explain to us what the heck crowdfunding even is, her own personal success story with crowdfunding, and how she's able to help artists like yourself create the funds necessary to put out a product that you can be proud of and that everyone can be a part of. My name is Connor Frost. I'm a professional songwriting mentor who's helped hundreds of songwriters now to write songs that they love and are proud of. And this is Dear Songwriter, the podcast to help you confidently write and release your music so that you can live your most musical and creative life. Let's get into it. Okay, welcome, Jess. It is so good to have you. I was hoping you could just give us a little bit of a rundown of who you are and what you do.
Yes, so I'm Jess Eva Allen, or Jess E. Allen, and I help artists crowdfund 5K in 30 days, their next music project.
Wow. So succinct, concise. That was amazing. And it's really good to have you here. So that's a good segue into what the heck is crowdfunding?
Yeah, so crowdfunding is really, I like to give the example of artists from the classical days where people had patrons and people had sponsors and all these different things. And it's really not that different to today, even with record labels and, different things like that. But the great strength that I see about crowdfunding is that independent artists without a label can have patrons and sponsors. And that's really what crowdfunding is. Crowdfunding is collecting large or small amounts of money from fans, friends, families, financial backers even, to support their art. A lot of people don't know what it is, but at the same time, this has been around for a while. So financial backing, at the end of the day, that's what it is.
I love that. And I'll be honest, I'm 35 now. I think over the course of my 20s, having certain opinions and periods of ranging immaturity, I think I had certain opinions and views on crowdfunding. I think in hindsight, now that I'm not as immature, I just don't think I understood it as much as I should. And I've never crowdfunded, and perhaps I missed out on some opportunities, but it's never too late, which is a good segue into my next question. What made you decide to crowdfund your album? And then maybe give us a little bit of context, what year that was. Bring us into that a little.
Yeah. I mean, it really started many, many years ago with me writing in my closet, at like 18, 19, just discovering songwriting and just being like, someday I'll have the funds to promote this and share it with people and record it with a professional producer. Maybe I'll learn to produce myself. And I did that thought process loop for like 10 years. Anyone else been in that thought process loop? I'm in the closet, I'm writing in my room, I'm staring at my voice memos app. Oh my gosh, that was so good. When you record something like, oh my gosh, that was so good. I'm going to do that someday in a studio. And yeah, I found myself in a loop of someday. Fast forward to maybe 2018, 19, I decided to self-fund a project with a producer. I'm mainly, I would say, singer. So I was trying to make myself produce, and I was like, why am I making myself do something that is just not something that I'm really naturally good at yet? And I still want to learn to produce, but it was keeping me from taking action. And the things that keep us from taking action, I say, it's time to be creative and find another solution. So I started self-producing it, and I kept running out of the funds, right? Anyone else been there? Like, okay, I'm paying for my own music. And then fast forward to 2020, I lost most of my income due to COVID because I was teaching wealthy people's kids in San Diego and the mansions and all that. I was teaching music and boom, COVID hits. I can't go anywhere. There were some people who wanted to continue online, but really everyone was panicked and I had no money. It's just like, are you serious right now? Like, what is going on? And to be honest, I moved back in with my parents. There was a lot of things that happened and I could have stopped, Connor. I could have stopped. And I decided not to. February 2020, I signed up for a coach, put down $15,000 for that coach. And then in March 2020, lost most of my income.
Wow.
So I could have stopped in a lot of ways. I could have backed out of that coaching program. I could have stopped with my album that I was working on. But I actually, because I signed up for that coaching program, I had mentors help me through my mindset of lack and lack of abundance. And I continued with that program. And in August 2020, I did their leadership program portion that they had. And I had a coach really say, why don't you crowdfund? It was just someone like suggesting they had never crowdfunded before. There was no like system for me to follow. I just, in 90 days, I committed to create $30,000 because I was so much in debt from COVID and like all these things. So in 90 days, I was like, I'm going to create $30,000. And 5K of that ended up being from crowdfunding my album. So the reason I say all of this is because if you're an artist and you realize, okay, there are so many circumstances coming my way, I get it. Like I could have considered them signs to stop. I could have been like, I can't afford this coaching program, so I'm going to back out. But despite all those things, I kept going. And I mean, I humbled myself. You said you had resistance to crowdfunding.
Yeah.
I've been there too, but I really had no other choice. Like it was literally like, what do I have to lose? All I have is my pride to lose. And at the end of the day, that's keeping me from my results anyways. That's how it happens.
Yeah. Appreciate you sharing all that. A couple things resonate with me. First of all, we have very parallel pandemic experiences. I had made the decision actually in 2019 to move out of my apartment in Jersey City, to move in with my parents. So it was intentional, but the plan was I was supposed to travel like all of 2020. I had plans for Taiwan. I had plans for Mexico. I had all these things. So I ended up moving in with my parents for longer than I intended. But I was also teaching. I was teaching Mandarin. I was teaching guitar. I was teaching ESL. I had already transitioned online, so the timing was weirdly good. But I also invested in a coach around that time, which helped me launch this business. So really interesting parallels. I was also working for a lot of wealthy families in New Jersey, teaching their kids. So that was the first thing that resonated with me. Second thing is I like that you said you created $30,000.
Yeah.
I feel like that's terminology that people wouldn't think to say or to use, but the idea that you can create money as opposed to raise or find, I'm sure it's all related, but I really like that term create, and hopefully that resonates with our listeners because that really, I had a moment of like, whoa, that's really cool. I guess my next question, you started to touch on it a little bit. I'm sure when you made this decision, there was this feeling of like, oh, I don't have any choice. And it was something that you clearly had been thinking about. But I'm guessing you still had some insecurities. You had some doubts, even when you made that decision. And I was hoping you'd share some of those thoughts with us, some of those doubts that maybe you had.
What I will say is I would have never made that goal of 30,000 without the program that I was in. Like there would be no support for me, no system. It wasn't a crowdfunding coaching program. It was a community focused support system for whatever huge goal that you had. So some people were saving their marriages. That was their goal. Some people were creating $30,000 like me. There was this camaraderie during that time. It sounds funny, but I almost didn't have any excuses because I went through some personal work beforehand, before I even made the goal to crowdfund. It was all this deep work that I had to do with this group of people that shot me into like this brave, courageous goal of $30,000. That being said, even though I didn't have them on the initial decision because I had done so much work on myself, I did have it on the process.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
I was like, wow, I'm so brave. I've cleared all this emotional trauma in my life. That stuff really does work. I realized some reasons that I hold myself small. So as I went through the process, 2 weeks before the deadline, I was $20,000 short.
Oh my gosh.
I know. So 2 months I had created $10,000, which is nothing to scoff at.
No,
right?
that's pretty good.
In 2 months, I created $10,000 with my business. I think I had started playing around with the idea of crowdfunding, but I really just was like, maybe I'll crowdfund, maybe I won't. And I actually started thinking, okay, this is pretty good. I created $10,000. I'm good. It sounds funny, but that's not an insecurity. It's more like a stopping myself. Like I got comfortable. And I've heard this from many times, but comfort is the opposite of success. It can be. And I got really comfortable and I was like, this is great. I'm good. And then I had a coach come up to me and was just like, yeah, you could stop here, or you could actually be in integrity with yourself and create this goal that you've never created before. Guess what? You're finally in the choice point. That's when the insecurities hit. I'm not good enough. I've never done this before. I don't create that type of money. And the coach, she didn't look at me, but she was on the phone with me. She was like, look, this is where you've been stopping your whole life. And I was scared. I was really scared. And looking back, I think the fear was that I would actually make it. If you ever like relate to fear of success, I think that's what I was feeling. Wow, I have all this support. I've cleared all this trauma in my life.
Now I got to execute. I got to follow through.
Exactly. Like now I have no excuses. I can't blame my parents.
Yeah, there you go.
You know,
True.
I was scared that I would actually make it. And so I was stopping myself. And so the coach looked at me over the phone and she was like, look, if you had $20,000 to make and it was your little nephew's life on the line, and this might trigger some people, your little nephew, he was 2 at the time, and someone had a gun to his head and was like, come up with $20,000 in the next 2 weeks or he's gone. What would you do? And I was like, well, I would call everybody I know. I would just do it. And she was like, what if this is life or death, this moment right now, this moment right here? What if this is life or death for your future? And maybe even your music. I mean, musicians have this story all the time. Someone listens to their music, their life is saved. I heard your song and I didn't take my life. I heard your song. I decided to mend things with my dad. And she's like, literally, this could be life and death. What if it is? And that shot me into action.
I think it's because of our own insecurities where we don't think about the possible positive impact we can have as artists and songwriters. And that ultimately keeps us from taking certain action like you're talking about, right? Like, what if I'm not good enough? Will anyone even care? Et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
I think for me, speaking to my insecurities about it back in the day was, I guess there was a couple things, and I'll segue this into a question. I think the first thing is, and maybe this is my upbringing, but I think in my 20s, I was definitely like one of those, I wear my hustle nature as a badge of honor. My ability to self-fund, right? My ability to create my own business, make ends meet on my own in the New York City area, just silly things like that, I think made me feel like I can and I should do this on my own. And so I've self-funded everything. On the other side, I think there is also this feeling of I have the ability and I have the means, perhaps more so than a lot of people who are trying to do this. I should do this on my own. I think back then I thought of it as asking for help, which it is to an extent. But my question is, what would you say to someone who has the means to self-fund about the benefits of crowdfunding?
That's a great question. So the first thing that I realized about that moment of urgency, where it's like, what if it is life and death? I realized coming up with $20,000 in 2 weeks was not going to be about me. That was a much bigger vision than me doing it myself and bootstrapping it. I had to bring people into this vision and become good at telling my story. And that's my first thing that I walk people through. Your story is what you're going to be telling anyways when you promote your album or single. You have to do like a 2-week, 4-week promo for your music anyways. Why not do it on the front end, get paid, and then do it again, right? You're literally getting paid to do the work that you have to do anyways to promote your song. That's what I would say is number one, you're doing the promotion that you're going to do anyways, but you're just getting paid faster. And I think with artists, there's this lack of urgency. Okay, just drip on your audience, drip all the time. And of course they come out in the red at the end of the year because there's no urgency. People are like, oh yeah, Connor's going to do that anyways. Maybe I'll support him this year, maybe next year. That's the other thing I would say is you're going to get paid faster to do what you're going to do anyways. Second, urgency. And I have this saying that I say for crowdfunding, connection plus urgency equals currency. So you must prioritize the connection first. That's why I say your story is number one. It's always number one. And then number two is that urgency. You got to give people a way to act on it once they are moved emotionally. But that's like every promotion. That's your next single. That's your next album. That's literally everything. Your ask happens to be, hey, can you support this album up front? Can you pre-order? Can you put the funds in? You know, and my last crowdfund that I helped an artist with, Phoenix Band, they had someone buy a one-on-one show for a few $1,000s. In pre-sales of an album, a few $1,000s, that's a lot of albums. You know what I mean? Yeah. But because they had a crowdfund, they got the few $1,000s up front before they even finished the tracks. This is a win-win for everybody. And you don't have to deliver on those shows right away. You could do that in 6 months, a year. You literally have your calendar set up just from one crowdfund. Crowdfund for 30 to 90 days. You have your audience deliver on it during the next year. You're going to do this anyways. Why not get paid urgently? Then you're in the black for the year. So that's what I would say. The connection plus urgency equals currency.
A couple things resonated with me. The win-win for everyone. Looking back at my journey with all this, I think naturally as artists and human people, we can be selfish. And I think when we think about crowdfunding, whether we are in favor of it or we have insecurities about it or we're not sure how we feel about it, I think we always default to thinking about what does it mean for me, the artist? My question to you is, what are the benefits for the patrons, for the people who are pre-ordering like you're talking about? I feel like that's something that artists don't naturally think about. They maybe think to themselves, oh, I'm asking for money. I'm raising money and it's for me. Like people are doing me a favor. What favors, what benefits are the patrons and people receiving? I guess we can talk about this maybe on a macro level and then maybe some more specific examples.
Yeah. See, the first thing that I jumped to is the micro. Again, I just gave an example. Someone bought a one-on-one show for themselves and their family. That is such a specialized experience. That is such a benefit of crowdfunding, whereas you may not have even thought to offer that before. I wanted to speak to the asking for help thing again, because I think the way that I did my crowdfunding experience, like when I explain it to people, they're like, oh, I could do that. So I want to give an example of how I asked for help, because it really does matter how you do it, how you present yourself. And if you're in this mindset of take, then that's what a crowdfund is going to be. It's just going to be like, gimme, gimme, gimme. But if you're in a mindset of generosity and value service, that transition from just artist, look at me, to like artist, business owner, entrepreneur, service generator. And when I involved people in the conversation of a crowdfund, they walked away from their conversation with me empowered, feeling valued, feeling like, wow, I really can help Jessica out and this is an honor. I want to speak to that first. So when I called up John, my friend John, I hadn't talked to him in 10 years and could be awkward, right? Could be awkward. I like to give this example because he was just awesome. But you can say, okay, I'm not going to call John because I haven't talked to him in 10 years. Or you could say, I haven't talked to John in 10 years. Who knows what he's up to? I could get curious about what he's up to and like be like, actually, I want to connect with him. So whenever I reached out to someone, that was the position I took. I messaged John on Facebook with a voice message and I said, hey, John, long time no see. Where in the world are you at? Hey, I'm working on a project right now. I thought of you. Are you open for a quick call? And I really was curious. He was in Africa or something like that. I was like, dude, what are you up to? Like, he just seemed like a person that was about his stuff. I really had that connection with him already. And I wasn't trying to get anything from him. I was literally like, I think he would like enjoy being a part of this. That's really what I thought. And so called him up. We caught up a little bit. And I said, hey, I really appreciate you taking my call. And then I shared my story with him. And I said, you know, John, I've been in the midst of the last 10 years hiding and creating music in my closet. And I've decided I don't want to do that anymore. I've decided that my voice matters, that I'm more than enough to make an impact on the world. And because of that, I'm finishing my EP that's been in the works for like 3 years. COVID hit. There's no way I can finish it alone. So I thought of you because you are naturally talented and you impact people on the regular, with your traveling and what you do in the world. He was a business owner too. So I was like, hey, I thought of you because you are these things to me. And I wanted to see if you wanted to come with me on the adventure and support me. And I also say, there's no pressure either. There's no pressure to do anything, but like I thought of you and I hadn't talked to you anyway. So this is cool.
Yeah.
And he was like, for sure.
Right.
How can I help? That's why I say connection first, because how you approach people and how you bring them on the journey, that's what benefits them. It's not just the rewards and the things that you give them, although those are great. It's how you involve them in the journey and how you value them.
Really good example. I think we as artists and creative people, and this was me for a long time, we have this insecurity when it comes to like selling. We have this thought of being perceived as a slimy business person, or we worry that we're going to make someone feel a certain way or they're going to think something about us, right? And that was definitely me for a long time, and almost this thought of, oh, well, creatives can't or shouldn't be savvy entrepreneurs or like business people, right?
Yeah, it's inauthentic.
It's all about the music. And wow, that was so incorrect. And both of us have worked with coaches and business coaches. And I think for me, I've really locked into like selling is serving. If you have something that is valuable to people, there's a transaction that takes place and people are going to experience that product, that experience differently if there's an investment attached to it. And I have my gripes with a lot of the way this world is run, but there's an element of selling is serving. And I hope that people walk away, if nothing else, certainly with that as a main point, because I think that's really important to what you're doing and to what you're preaching here for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And if selling is like a weird word for you, I love, again, creating. Creating money is no different than creating a song at the end of the day. Like you have to sit to create money. Like you have to sit and be like, what is my vision? Why am I doing this? Who do I want to help? Who am I writing this song for? Like, why am I writing this song? What am I feeling right now? When I went into that conversation with John, like I was feeling it out. Like, I think John's really positive. He is a really cool person. I'm going to like invite him. And if ask is a triggering word, right, I would invite him. Like be the host of a party is my invitation to doing a crowdfund. And I got my 3 steps that I walk people through to build the house for the party and to decorate the house. At the end of the day, you're the host. So invite people to the party.
Very good point, right? So if you don't like the word sell, the word is provide, the word is invite. But the point is that whatever relationship you have with that idea, hopefully it's not holding you back from possible cool experiences where you could really be helping someone. And your music and your story, which we've touched on a couple times, can be really impactful and powerful for people. So people should hear that, both of those things. My next question as we kind of wrap up here, if you're someone who is considering crowdfunding your next album, right? So whether you're in the beginning stages of maybe a few demos and they're not produced yet, or maybe you have the demos already, right? And you want to take it into the next stages of finding a producer, et cetera, and you want to crowdfund this process. What would be like a good first step for that person to take? If we were to give someone just one step that they could take today, what would that step be?
It's really my first point that I walk people through, but it's get down your signature story for the project. Because if you think about like American Idol or being featured on the news or a magazine, any PR work is going to have a story along with the music project. Christine Morel is another artist coach. She talks about this a lot. So having your story down is number one. Because I know you like to do some coaching on this podcast. I'll give like 3 questions that you can ask.
Is that not what we've been doing this whole time?
I mean, yeah. So these are some how-tos because we've been doing a lot of mindset talk here. And that's my favorite thing to talk about, obviously. Because if you don't have your mindset right, there's no way you can even take the how-tos and do it. The first question you want to ask yourself is, what is the story behind your project? Why is the project important to you right now in this current time? Why do you need to get it out? And what will this project do for others? Those are the 3 questions that I ask people. And you take this story and you run with it for the next 6 months. So you film your opt-in video for the crowdfund. You share this story. You write the page description for the crowdfund. You share this story. You write social media posts for the crowdfund. You share this story. You call people up on the phone. You share this story. You get interviewed by the news. You share this story. You get asked to be on The Voice. You share this story. So literally, if you get your signature story down, and I have some people who just ask me to workshop their story with them. Yeah. That's all I do with them, because this is such a key element to any aspect of promotion. And I think us artists, we like to be like, well, if you want to hear my story, just listen to my song. I get that. I'm like totally the same way. I'd rather like just sing to you than actually tell you with my words. But because I did get some coaching and I started learning how to communicate better, I've gotten pretty good at it. And I understand the struggles of that as an artist, and I just sing it to you. But I also understand the process, how to get there as a creative. So that's the first thing that I would say. Get your signature story.
Love that. Yeah, the ability to tell stories through whatever medium it is, so crucial for so many reasons. Songwriting, marketing, promotion, so crucial. I was on a client call yesterday with my friend Tone. Shout out to Tone. I know he listens to this podcast. And I had similar questions for him that you just laid out, because I'm kind of helping him craft his story a little bit. And I'm like reading what he wrote. I was like, dude, this could be like a Netflix series. This is like amazing stuff here. And he hasn't taken that step to really share that story yet. Wow. And I'm like, man, like this is really powerful stuff. I know it's hard. I know it's making yourself vulnerable. Some of these things are complicated. I recognize that, but people want to hear it. And there's at least one person out there that might really resonate with your story. So yeah, storytelling is just so crucial. So appreciate you sharing that. Yeah, my last question, Jess. And thank you so much for joining today. Where can we find you? Tell us where we can find you.
Yeah. So I'm on Instagram. You can find me at Jess Living to the Fullest. So JESS, not just, but Jess. And then Living to TO the Fullest. That's my IG. And then I have a TikTok that sometimes I post on. But I'm pretty active on IG. And then my email is coaching@jessevaallen.com. And then my website is jessevaallen.com.
And as always, those will be in the show notes. Jess, thank you so much. This was so awesome to connect with each other. So awesome to dig into what you do. I know that this audience will benefit from it, whether they're ready to take that plunge today, 2 years from now, whenever that might be. Hopefully they have more tools to do it. I'm definitely inspired as well, and something I've been thinking about recently as well.
Yeah.
So thank you so much, Jess, and we'll talk soon.
Thanks, Connor.